So thirdly, let's look at directory or folder management. So assuming we have folder 1, assuming we have folder 2, and we have folder 3. How do we create these folders? How do we move into and out of the folder? How do we add contents into the folder? And how do we delete the folder? So we are going to look at creating directories, moving into and out of directories, adding content to the directory, and deleting directories. So one, creating a directory. For you to create a directory, we make use of the m command. So the mkdir creates a directory. So this is how we use the command mkdir, and then you give directory, we give the directory name. So in our case, let's create the 3 folders. We are going to create folder 1, folder 1. We'll create folder 2, and then we'll create folder 3. So let's get to our console to create these various folders. We come back to our terminal. So for us to create folder 1, we use the command make directory. We give the name folder 1. To create another folder, we do make directory folder 2. To create another directory, make directory folder 3. So for us to view all the directories, we do an ls. We now see we have folder 1, folder 2, folder 3. And this is completely different from what we had when we were creating files. So let's create some random files. Touch random 1.txt. Let's do touch random 2.txt, and then touch random 3.txt. So if you do an ls, you see we have 3 folders looking differently, and then you see 3 files looking differently. Let's add some content into the random 1.txt file. So let's do vi random 1.txt. So if you get into this random 1.txt, we press I to type, we press letter I to enter into insert mode. So this is our first test random file. We are testing how to manage directories. So once you do that, you press escape. After you press escape, press colon W cure bin bash, and you save. For us to see the content in a file, like we said previously, you do the cat command. So we want to see the content in the random 1 file. So we do cat random 1.txt. You see the content. This is our first test random file. Now for us to see the content in a folder, we do cat folder 1. Now, because this is a folder, you cannot cut into a folder. They tell you folder 1 is a directory. So take note, we cannot cut into a folder. You cannot cut into a folder. For you to view the contents in a folder, you cannot cut into a folder. So two, moving into a directory. So for you to get into a particular directory, assuming we have three directories: folder one, folder two, folder three. To move into this directory, you make use of the cd command. The cd command helps us to move into a directory. For you to move to the directory, you do cd, and then you give the directory path. So for us to test that, we can say cd into folder one, and then it will take us into the folder one directory. We can do cd into folder two, it will take us into the folder two directory. Now, to move back into your previous directory, you make use of the cd dot dot. So cd dot dot will move you back to the parent directory, where this represents the parent directory. So to move into or out of the directory, you make use of the cd command. So let's get into the console to test how to move into and out of a directory. Let's do an ls. We see we have folder one, folder two, folder three. So to move to folder one, we do cd folder one, and then it will take us now to folder one. Now, for you to know which directory you are found in, as we saw in our terminal management, you do the pwd. So pwd will now give you the location of your directory. So this is the directory path. You now see that we are in home EC2 user folder one. So for you to create a file, you now see that previously we were in the general EC2 user directory. But now, if you look at this, we are now in the folder one directory. Now, if you create a file, we can create files in this directory. Let's say touch test one.txt, touch text two.txt, touch test three.txt. And then you do an ls, you now see that in this directory we have three files: test1.txt, test2.txt, and test3.txt. Now, to move back to our main directory, this directory, you do cd dash cd dot dot, it takes you back to this directory. So if you do an ls here, we now have folder one, folder two, folder three. To move into the folder one directory again, we do cd folder one, and it will take you to the folder one directory. If you have to see the content, you do ls, you see the contents in folder one directory. To cd back, or to go back to the previous directory, you see the content. Now, if you do a pwd, you will see the existing directory. Now, to move to a particular directory path, let's go to folder two. Let's cd into folder two. Once you get into folder two, if you do an ls, we have not created any content in folder two, so there is nothing in folder two. For you to know the exact path of folder two, you do pwd, and it will give you this path. You can copy this path, you right click, and then you copy. Once you copy this path, let's go back to our main directory. We do cd dash dash, we hit enter. Let's clear our screen. We can do another ls. You see we have folder one, folder two, folder three, random txt, random txt, random txt. Let us move directly to folder two. We have copied the path of folder two. Let us move directly to folder two. So for you to move to folder two, you do cd, and then you paste the path which you copied. You paste the path. So if you cd home EC2 user, it will take you to the folder two directory directly. So this way you have specified the directory path. This is you specifying the directory path. Thirdly, how do we copy between directories? For us to copy between directories, we make use of the cp command. So cp helps us to copy files. And how do you use the command? You take cp, you specify the source path, and then you specify the destination path. So for us to copy a file in folder 1 into folder 3, we do the cp, you give the path home ec2 user folder 1, and then we say test1.txt, and then you also give the path of folder 2, which may be home ec2 user and all that. So for us to test this, we come back to our terminal, we do an ls, you see it into folder 1, we do an ls, you see we have test1.txt. So let's copy test1.txt in folder 1 to folder 3. So we cd back, and then we copy test1, which is in folder 1. So we take home ec2 user folder 1, we specify the file test1. We are copying this file into home ec2 user folder 3. So this will copy the test1.txt file, which is found in folder 1, into folder 3. So you hit enter, and now if you go to folder 3, you do cd to folder 3, I do an ls, you now see we have test1 that has been copied into it. If you want to copy this same test2 into folder 3, we cd back to our home directory, and then we cp, use a cp command, copy command, cp command, home ec2 user folder 1, test2, test2.txt, we are copying it into home ec2 user folder 3, we are copying it into home ec2 user folder 3, then you hit enter. Once you do this and you do an ls, you see we have folder 3, we cd into folder 3, we will now do an ls in folder 3, and you find that we have test1 and test2. So the cp command helps us to copy files between folders. So how do we rename files? Renaming files. So how do we rename files? We use the mv command. So we use the mv command, and to use this command to rename a folder, we do mv, you give the source path like the existing name, and then you give the destination path. So this will change this file from the existing name, to the new name. So let's go ahead to rename our folders in our terminal. We come back to our terminal, we do an ls. Let's clear our screen first. We clear. Let's do an ls. We cd to our main directory. We do an ls. We have folder 1, folder 2. Let's also clear. We ls. We have folder 1, folder 2, folder 3. Now let's rename folder 1 into doc1. So to do that, we do mv, we select the path home ec2 user folder 1. We want to give it the new name home ec2 user. We now give it the new name doc1, and you hit enter. If you do an ls, you now see folder 1 has been renamed to doc1. The same thing, if you want to rename folder 2 into doc2, you do mv, You specify the directory name home EC2 user folder 2, and we give it a new name, home EC2 user doc 2. You hit enter, you do ls, you now see we have doc 1 and doc 2. Now if you want to rename this file random1 text into a different file, remember, if you come to the main, we are in the home directory here. So if you do pwd, you see we are in the home EC2 user. So if you want to rename this file that is in the home EC2 user, we do home, we do mv home EC2 user random2.txt, and then we give it a new name, home EC2 user. We now give it a new name, renamed.txt, and you hit enter. So if you do an ls in the home directory, we now have doc1, doc2, folder 1, and then it has created a new file, rename.txt, that has the same content as random1.txt. The last thing which we are going to look at is deleting directories. To delete a directory, you make use of the command rmdir command, and this will delete a directory. Now, how can we use this? We use the command rmdir, and then we give the directory name. So we give the directory name. Assuming that there are contents in this directory, you will be forced to use the rm.rf command to recursively remove everything that is found in the directory, and you can do that using rm rf, and then you still give the directory name. So for us to test this, we clear, and then we do ls. Let's try to remove folder 3. So to remove folder 3, we use rm directory, we use rm directory, and then we type folder 3. You hit enter. Now it says fail to remove the directory because there are content in it. So it says fail to remove folder 3 because the directory is not empty. So for us to remove this directory, we must empty the contents in that directory. You can actually cd into the directory and remove the content one after the other. So if you do an ls, you see we have text1. So for us to remove all those, we do rm test1.txt, and then test2.txt, and hit enter. So if you do ls, there's nothing in the directory. So let's cd back into our parent directory, and then now let's try now to remove the directory. So if you take rm dir folder 3 and you hit enter, it will now remove the directory. So if you do an ls, you will now see that there is no longer folder 3 because we first remove all the content using the rm command. Let's also try to remove doc1. We take rm directory doc1. It tells you directory is not empty. So for you to remove a directory that already has content, you use the rm rf command, and then you specify the directory name doc1, and then you hit enter. So now it has removed this directory doc1 despite the fact that there is content in it. So if you do an ls, you will no longer see doc1. So let's also delete doc2. So you do rm rf doc2, and then you do an ls. We no longer have any directories. So that does it for directories.